You wake up, but something is missing. There's no obituary in the feed, no ambulance in the background, no morning statistic whispering how many lives the night has claimed. The world is still, not in grief, but in a strange equilibrium, like it stopped breathing and forgot how to exhale. Somewhere in the Arctic silence, a girl stands alone beside a frozen lake. She's not dressed for warmth, only for ceremony. Her breath doesn't fog, her skin doesn't flinch, because today, death, ended, not paused, not postponed, ended, and no one knows how to feel. Was this a cure, a miracle, or the beginning of something we were never meant to touch? It started quietly. The last cancer cell neutralized, the final neuron restored. Gene editing evolved into something gentler than surgery, sharper than time. The telomeres stopped fraying. The entropy inside us held its breath, and we called it progress. But we forgot, death is not just a failure of biology, it's a rhythm. A punctuation, a gravity that keeps meaning from drifting into infinity. Without it, everything begins to float. And now the girl watches her own reflection flicker in the ice. Not aging, not cracking, just there, suspended, beautiful, and wrong. We did it, we broke the clock. But what if that was never the problem? This isn't a story about death, it's a story about what we lose when it's gone. There was no ceremony, no global broadcast, no countdown clock, just an update. Buried inside a journal, under a headline no one read carefully enough. Full cellular stabilization achieved in postmitotic tissues. It didn't sound like a revolution. It sounded clinical. But in that quiet line of code, death was deprecated. Not eliminated violently, not conquered in battle, just rendered obsolete. A function no longer required. The news moved slowly. At first, it was treated like another biotech milestone, a victory for labs and longevity startups. A promise for the sick, the old, the terrified. But within a year, mortality rates across most of the developed world dropped to near zero. Accidents still happened, yes, violence too. But time, the great eroder, had been disarmed. The sand in the hourglass stopped falling, and no one knew how to behave. Funerals vanished, memorial industries collapsed, mourning became outdated. Grief lost its timing. People who expected to bury their parents suddenly had to renegotiate lifelong dynamics. Relationships that once had arcs, beginnings, middles, ends, became flat, perpetual loops. No closure, just continuation. You'd think this would be cause for celebration. Eternal life, the oldest myth, now engineered into reality. But celebration requires finality. Without an end, joy decays. Birthdays lost their magic. Anniversaries became indistinguishable from ordinary Tuesdays. We had gained infinite time, but lost the urgency to fill it. In cities, the effect was subtle at first, a slow erosion of ambition. Deadlines became optional, dreams stretched indefinitely. You could always write that novel someday. You could always learn the language, fix the relationship, move to another country. Later. Later became forever, and forever became inertia. The girl from the frozen lake is now walking through a park in a city that hasn't changed in 20 years. The trees are taller, the buildings cleaner, but the people? Suspended. Stylish, beautiful, unaging, and somehow untouched by momentum. She passes a bench where a couple has been having the same conversation for what feels like decades. They don't notice her. No one does. Because when death disappears, so does the edge that makes us pay attention. We used to say life is short as a way to wake ourselves up, to choose, to act. But now life isn't short, it's flat, and nothing wakes you from a dream with no end. Without death, nothing is urgent, and without urgency, nothing burns bright. It didn't happen suddenly. Meaning doesn't collapse like a building. It erodes like cliffs, grain by grain, storm by storm, until what held the shape of a world becomes a shoreline of scattered fragments. A century into immortality, language itself began to shift. Not the words, they remained intact, but their weight changed. Legacy no longer meant anything when nothing was left behind. Hope lost its horizon. Even childhood dissolved into an indefinite adolescence with no clear threshold to adulthood. And work mutated. At first there was a boom. Artists, philosophers, engineers, all rushing to imagine what a post-death society might look like. But with no ticking clock, creativity began to thin. Innovation slowed. Great works became endless projects. Painters repainted, writers rewrote, films were released, then revised, then retracted. Perfectionism metastasized. Because when time is infinite, no version ever feels final. The girl stands in front of a museum. Its sign reads, "Living Exhibit, Humanity's Ongoing Masterpiece." Inside, there's a single room, white, silent, with a sculpture that changes every week. It's beautiful, but also unfinished. It always will be. Outside, people pass without looking. Meaning used to be a function of effort under pressure. Deadlines gave shape to stories. Mortality made every choice count. But now, with no terminal point, every path loops back into itself. Every story wanders. Some tried to resist this drift. Governments issued artificial life chapters, limiting careers to 50-year spans. Religions splintered. Some embraced immortality as divine, others rejected it as a spiritual virus. But even resistance was eventually absorbed into the flatline. Because resistance requires contrast, a thing to push against. And when death left the stage, so did tension. Even memory changed. Without a definitive end, the past stopped hardening into history. It stayed soft, editable. People revised their own narratives. Some archived themselves every century, splitting their personalities into eras. Others forgot, not due to damage, but choice. Memory became a burden, not a foundation. A library too vast to navigate, and so they deleted. Whole decades, whole selves. The girl enters a chamber called the Vault of Forgotten Selves. Along the walls, holograms of people who've erased their own pasts. Some smile, some cry, most are blank. In the center, a terminal asks, "Which version of you do you want to become today?" You can feel the paradox tightening. Immortality promised us continuity, but gave us fragmentation. It preserved our bodies, but eroded our coherence. We became novels with no last chapter, constantly rewriting the middle, never arriving. When there's no end, there's no meaning, only motion without memory. She's sitting in a cafe that serves no food, just experiences. Virtual, curated, reconstructed from centuries of recorded sensations. The texture of a croissant baked in 1892, the taste of strawberries grown before the ozone collapse, a kiss once remembered by a woman who no longer exists. The girl doesn't order anything, she just watches. Because something has changed, not in the world, but in the people. They look real. They move, talk, interact, but it's performance, not deception, not artifice, something subtler, a kind of internal hollowness, like the light inside them no longer reaches the surface. They are not empty, they are overwritten. The self, once shaped by time, by loss, by triumph, now loops endlessly. Without death, there is no ultimate test, no irreversible turning point, no moment that seals who you are. So identity fragments, multiplies, weakens. Some begin to split formally, digital clones, parallel simulations, neuroforks, each version optimized for a different life path. There's the ambitious version, still chasing influence, the sensual one focused on aesthetic pleasure, the monk, the addict, the wanderer. But none of them end, so none of them resolve. The girl walks through a corridor lined with translucent mannequins, each containing a motionless human figure, eyes closed, dreaming. A museum? No, a storage unit. Each figure represents a version of someone who no longer wants to be, but refuses to die. They sleep inside eternal consciousness, looping through simulated dreams, not out of ecstasy, out of exhaustion. There is no language for this kind of fatigue, no myth for souls that can't decay. In traditional life, death was the container, the silence that made the music audible, the pain that made joy bright. But immortality, stripped of tragedy, also stripped away intensity. We adapted, yes, but adaptation is not meaning, it's survival without direction. There's a term for this, now widely used in social cognition labs, temporal dissociation. The inability to locate oneself inside a narrative, to say, this is where I am and this is why it matters. Instead, people say, I've lived too many lives to know which one is mine. And yet, we continue. The systems still function. Bodies remain smooth, minds elastic. The infrastructure of immortality hums quietly beneath everything. But the self, the thing we once believed would shine brightest when death was removed, is fading. Not into darkness, into neutrality. And the girl still watching from the cafe sees someone smile. It's beautiful, but hollow, like a memory of joy rendered in perfect resolution. When you can be anyone forever, you stop being someone. They called themselves the finalists, not out of irony, out of hunger, not for drama, for meaning. It began quietly, like most true revolutions. A manifesto whispered through private channels, a series of encrypted coordinates leading not to protests or communes, but to places designed for one thing, return. Not to tradition, not to the past, but to limitation, to ending. The girl finds one of these places. It's not marked on any map, just a clearing beyond the grid, where the air feels heavier, more decisive. People here wear time like it matters. Their clothing fades, their skin marks, their hearts race. They've chosen it, the vulnerability, the pain, the boundary. They've opted out of the indefinite. The finalists live on what they call linear time. 80 years, one body, no reboots, no forks, no resets, a single arc, unrevised. They document nothing, they record no memories. They are witnessed, not archived. It sounds extreme. To those outside, it sounds like regression. But to them, it is resurrection. Because they remember what the rest have forgotten, that the shape of a life is carved not just by what we gain, but by what we can't get back. They want to feel the weight of choices, the finality of a kiss, the holiness of the last goodbye. One woman, her hair gray, her voice slow, tells the girl something that stays with her. I cried last week because I knew it would be the last time I'd ever see autumn, and for the first time in 200 years I felt alive. There's something radical in this, not just choosing death, but choosing story, choosing to live as if the world isn't endless, to breathe as if breath runs out, to love with the risk of absence. And something about that terrifies those who remain immortal, not because it's wrong, but because it reveals what they've lost. Because in this fragile, finite mode of being, there is clarity. A single life is sharp. It cuts, it binds, it burns with purpose. The girl walks away from the clearing with something in her chest that hadn't stirred in years. A sense of edge, of border, of momentum. Not fear, not even grief, just shape. And for the first time she wonders, is death the opposite of life or its frame? What if we didn't need more time, just more meaning per moment? She returns to the city, but it no longer feels like home, more like a rehearsal stage. Vast, polished, eternally lit. People move gracefully, but there is no tension in their steps, no weight behind their glances. It's beautiful, but sterile, like a ballet performed without music. The girl walks past mirrored buildings. Their surfaces no longer reflect light, they reflect versions, not of the world, but of her. Each pane offers a slightly different self, more confident, more detached, more adventurous, more serene. None of them are wrong, none of them are fully true. They are options. This is what we built, a civilization optimized for possibility. No risk of death, no scarcity of time. Infinite versions, infinite choices, infinite mirrors. But with each possibility kept alive, we abandon the privilege of choosing. We don't decide, we defer. The algorithms support this. We're offered endless content, customized timelines, tailor-made narratives. AI simulations allow us to relive days from our past, or try days we never had. Whole worlds rendered from fragments of preference. We are not passive, but we are floating. And then comes the quietest crisis of all. Not violence, not collapse, but dissociation. A gentle thinning of selfhood. People begin to ask questions no one knows how to answer. Who am I if I can never be lost? What is a memory if it never fades? What is love if absence is obsolete? The girl enters a chamber called the Convergence. It is circular, empty, and impossibly silent. At its center, a single polished surface. Not a screen, not a sculpture, just a dark oval like obsidian. No image appears when she looks into it. Nothing. For a moment, it unsettles her, and then she understands. It is the first mirror that doesn't show who she might become, only who she is now. Just this, just here, just one life. No extensions, no edits, a still point. She stays, not long, just long enough to feel the tremble of the world pressing in again, time returning to her body, not as decay, but as gravity. And somewhere inside her, she begins to ask not what more can I be, but what is worth being if I only get one version? The city hums on, eternal, elegant, unmoved. But in a single room, for a single girl, the future begins to contract. Not in despair, in focus. Sometimes the clearest view comes from the smallest mirror. She returns to the lake. The ice is thinner now, the air warmer. Around her, the forest hums with cycles too old to fear endings. Leaves fall, decay, nourish. Insects emerge only to vanish. A fox appears, watches her for a breath, and disappears again. No drama, no legacy. Just presence and then absence. And for the first time, she feels the silence as something kind. Because everything we feared about death, the loss, the pain, the finality, was also everything that shaped our joy. We didn't love despite the end. We loved because of it. The trembling, the risk, the urgency, it was never an error. It was the point. In our chase to outrun death, we thought we were preserving life. But what we preserved was motion, not meaning. Existence, not experience. We thought we could stretch the present into eternity. But eternity, without death, is not presence. It's drift. The girl kneels by the lake and places her hand on the ice. She sees her reflection again. But this time, she does not stare. She smiles, not out of joy, but clarity. She has remembered something everyone else forgot. We are not meant to be finished. We are meant to be complete. And completion comes not from more time, but from enough. Enough love, enough questions, enough quiet, enough fear to make courage matter, enough light to make shadows beautiful. She rises and begins to walk. The ice behind her starts to melt slowly, almost ceremonially, not as a disaster, as a passage, a release. Somewhere far away in the core of the immortal city, someone feels it too, a shift, a weight returning to their chest, a hunger they haven't named in centuries, not for pleasure, not even for truth, for ending. Because an ending, a true, irreversible, sacred ending, is not the opposite of life. It is its final articulation, the last note that gives the song its soul. And maybe, just maybe, what if death was never the enemy? What if it was the thing that made us real?